Hello, everyone. Welcome to this workshop from the GRWB Writing Bootcamp. This workshop is called Thesis and Dissertation Process, Steps for Formatting Review and Common Mistakes. Joining us today is Dr. Jennifer Stevens. Dr. Stevens is the Thesis and Dissertation Manager here at UNLV. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to you to take us away. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Dustin. Thank you, everyone, for having me. Let me go ahead and share my screen with you all. So the thesis and dissertation formatting is definitely something that I think most students don't even really consider or think about until you're done or almost done. So the fact that you all will kind of have this in the back of your head as you're finishing up, I think it'll be really beneficial, a lot less anxiety provoking. I know a lot of students hear horror stories or the complete opposite. So most students either have like a very easy time with it, or again, if you wait till the end, it's not really that it's hard so much, it's just stressful. And we know that you've just finished your document, you've worked so hard, all these months and years working on this. The last thing you really want to have to worry about is page numbers and headings and things like that, right? So we really do try, excuse me, and do as much as we can to get you ready for that. And then while you're completing your formatting, kind of helping you along as much as we can. So my name is, as you mentioned, Dr. Stevens, and I'm the Thesis and Dissertation Formatting Manager. And be sure to write that email address down. It's going to be throughout the presentation. And I can even send these slides to you if you want to share this with the group afterwards. But this is the main email address for the thesis and dissertation team over at UNLV. So anytime there's a question, never hesitate to reach out, but we will have that later on. All right, so what are we going to go over today? A couple of different things. So one, preparing for your format review. How are you going to get ready for this? I'm going to go over the different resources that the Graduate College offers to you all to help with that. And then when and how to submit your document for format review. And then I'll discuss the actual review process with you all, kind of go over what happens behind the scenes, how long it will take, and all of that. And then next, once you get feedback from your format review, how do you go about doing those corrections and what does that look like? And then finally, steps that you're going to take after you receive formatting approval and get to upload to ProQuest and all of that good stuff. And if you don't know already, once you receive the formatting approval and then upload to ProQuest, that's literally the very last thing that you have to do, right, to check off your list for graduation. So even though you finish your defense and everything, you feel kind of done, but there's still all these other steps, right, to take care of. So this is at the very end when you're almost there, so have hope. All right, so first, preparing for your review. We always tell students you want to really start thinking about this after your thesis, dissertation, or doctoral project defense. And this is because the document that you turn in for your format review can only have changes made that are formatting issues that we have you make. So there can't be any changes to the substance of your document or to the actual text, right? So for this reason, you want to wait until you have all those edits finished from your committee, everything in there that needs to be in there, and then you're going to start really thinking about getting it ready if you haven't started for that formatting process. So then you'll pull up some of the resources that we have for you all to kind of check your document and make sure it does have everything. And then finally, just go through your document and make those edits as best you can to fit the formatting guidelines. And then in that review process, your reviewer will help you get your document into the exact shape that it needs to be for the publisher standards or uploading to ProQuest. Okay, so what are all of these different resources that we have for students, right? Like I said, we try and make it as smooth of a process as possible. So we do offer a variety of tools to you all to kind of help assist that along. So we'll go over each of these in detail, but we have some formatting manuals, PDF manuals that you can look at. We're starting to do some YouTube videos, so having that visual and audio component, right? Because we know some students reading it and looking at the step-by-step is easier. We have all different types of learners. So these different things we're doing, again, we really try and make it as easy for the student as possible. And then next, we'll go over our formatting office hours. And then, like I said, when in doubt, always email with any question. And I always tell people who come to my office hours for the formatting assistance, even if you email us and it's not our department, right, or our responsibility, we'll find you the right person to connect with. So always email if you have questions as you're finishing up. All right, so first, our first resource that we provide students is our dissertation, thesis and dissertation formatting manuals. And these are step-by-step instructions, PDFs, that go through all of the different components that you'll need for your final document, what order they need to be in, which sections are required and which are not, but you can have them. And then with the formatting manuals, these go through, again, kind of a step-by-step layout of what should be included in that section and how to do it. So for example, the page numbers formatting manual, this lays out all the different rules, right? But also how to complete it. So one of the things, and that's in that most common formatting issues, is page numbers. And I think the only reason for that is, in my experience so far, most students haven't had to do a lot of work with like page breaks, inserting different page breaks and styles of numbering, right? The lowercase Roman numerals and Arabic numerals. So that's the only thing. It's little things like that that tend to hang people up. And again, it's not that it's necessarily super difficult, but most of us just aren't used to having to do that, right, in our everyday papers that we've been doing, including myself. I learned it for this. So I always tell students, don't feel bad if anything in here is unfamiliar or you don't know how to do it. Again, that's why we provide these. So really quick, I'm going to click on the link for the web page just so you can see what it looks like. And this is the main grad college thesis and dissertation website. Sorry if it takes a second here. But again, this is where you'll find all of the different materials that we offer, and also a lot of information on things like the links to submit your document will be on here. When you upload to ProQuest, all the information for that will be on here. So you'll hear me reference this website a couple of times throughout. And so I'm going to go over a couple of little sections on there that are important. But again, it's all going to be found on that main grad college / thesis website. So first, this document, most common formatting issues. I'll go ahead and pull that up too, because I know that's usually a question that most students have, right? If it's going to come up. That most students have is, what is it that I can expect to maybe have some issues with, or are there things that a lot of students have problems with? And so that kind of highlights that. Let me pull that up. Doesn't want to connect, so we'll just pull that up here. All right. So some of the major issues that I've noticed just in my time doing this, there's a couple of different sections that you'll see on in the final document that, again, maybe students aren't necessarily used to having to look at. And this one is going to be, let's see here, general guidelines, number 3.
I'm so sorry to interrupt you. Are you sharing a website? It still shows the PowerPoint.
Oh, sorry. Yes, let me go to sharing. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
No, that's perfect. Thank you so much. I don't want to be talking and then, yeah, everyone's like, what Amazing. All right, is that pulling it up now?
It is. It's loading a web page now.
Okay, perfect. So we'll do, let me copy and paste that other web page over so that it comes up on there. Sorry, technical difficulties.
No problem. Technology has a mind of its own.
Yes, exactly. And again, this is why we do so many of these different resources, right? Including the office hours, especially, is because even a lot of things, I always tell students, things in Word, let's say Microsoft Word, there's just little glitches and things that happen in there. So you might be trying to format something and do it over and over a couple times and think, I must be doing it wrong. When really, it's just, yeah, sometimes you have to do it like 3 or 4 times for it to accept it, let's say, like in Word and save it and this and that. So yes, good, kind of a good segue for that. Technology, yes. So, and can you give me a thumbs up? This is showing, right? The guidelines. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Website. So this is the website here, Thesis and Dissertation Guidelines, all of the links. Down here, you'll see there's numbers with everything. So you'll hear me refer to a couple of these different numbers. So here under general guidelines for thesis and dissertation, not pop-up ad for shopping. Sorry. All right. So most common formatting issues, we'll click on that. And here's an example of one of our PDFs that we have. And the other formatting manuals look very similar. Let me go ahead and make that as big as I can, just so you can see. Okay, so here we have the most common formatting issues, right? And like I said, there's just certain things that in most documents you don't really have to think about or haven't had to think about before. And this kind of just highlights some of those and some of the most common mistakes. So here it goes over each section, but I would say just from my experience working with students, some of the major things to kind of keep in mind are the cover page, for one, because there is a very specific order of what they want on there. Your title, for example, is the only thing that should be double spaced, and then everything else is single spaced, little things like that. And then the other thing right here, you see a note about figures and tables. So a lot of students include different figures, tables, images, equations, things like that, which is awesome, wonderful. It's just they want it formatted a certain way, right? So for example, this note here, it talks about having two double-spaced line breaks, right? Separating it from the text. And in the formatting manual for the tables and figures, there's some visual examples of that so that you can read on how to do it, but also see, right? What does this look like? What are they talking about? Because a lot of times there's almost like a jargon that we use because there's no other better way to say it, but it isn't necessarily super clear maybe 100% of the time. So for example, they use the language here, 2 double-spaced line breaks. And all that means is 2 double-spaced blank lines. And we try and like put that in our notes for students too when we send you your feedback, just so it's very clear what we're trying to have you do. But go ahead and definitely look through that, I would say. But those are some of the main things that you want to kind of look at. Some of these documents, this is a good one, and then document order, that's also a good one to go through too. But I could spend all day talking about that. So I'm going to go back to sharing the PowerPoint. Let's see here, share content. All right. Hopefully that pops back up. Oh, perfect. Thank you. All right. So that website is where you'll find all of those different resources. And like I say, I'll mention that website again. So it's kind of an important one. And to get to the manuals that I've been talking about, as you see in the image there on the bottom right, you're going to go under number 5, organization of the thesis and dissertation. So that's how you get to those. All right, So next, this is kind of exciting for us and our team, because this is our newest edition of ways to kind of help students with the formatting process, is our YouTube videos. So we have a couple of them that we finished. There's 3 so far. There's the cover page, copyright page, and abstract. So those are available on the UNLV Grad College YouTube channel. And if you go in there, you would just search TD series, and then that will bring up all the different videos. But we'll probably even add those links to those to that website once we get them all finished. But so far we have those, and again, it's really exciting. They're all pretty short, relatively short. The cover page one is a little bit longer, 5 minutes, just because there's, like I say, so many little details that you need to include on your cover page. But we walk you through that step by step, and you'll see it. It's pretty neat. So definitely check those out if you can. But as you'll see, the other ones, we try and keep them pretty short, right? We know you don't want to spend, when you're trying to figure something out, hours watching all these videos, right? So most of them are going to be under 2 minutes is our goal. So this one's like a minute 20, minute 23. Again, just something that students can watch and actually see it happen, that, oh, this is what they want me to try and do. So very exciting, but yeah, still kind of coming soon. But we do have those 3 up so far if you want to check those out. Okay, and then our next resource that we offer students is our formatting office hours. And typically this is once, you can definitely do it, before, or, as you're working on your paper to try and get ready for this process. You could do it anytime. But we really see a lot of students using the office hours when they're working on their revisions. And there's certain things that maybe you just still can't get even after looking at the manuals or watching the video. Maybe you can't, like on your computer or in Word, right, figure out how to do those things. So these office hours are really nice. I meet with students like this and share my screen. They'll send me their document, and we'll kind of review it together if it's an issue like that, like how to do the page numbers and stuff like that. But this is all one-on-one assistance. So everything is directly related to you, your paper, and me or someone from our team trying to help you get it ready, right, to get that formatting approval. And all of those office hours appointments are on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 12 to 2. But always check an email if that's outside of your availability, because the good thing about these appointments is that they're virtual. So you don't have to like come to campus necessarily or be in a certain place at a certain time. And for the reviewer, it makes it a lot more easy to be flexible on these hours. So like, let's say you work a 9 to 5 job and you need to do it after that or something. Like, we can always definitely try and find a way to meet with you during some time, right? But these office hours, again, are very helpful if there's something that you still can't figure out, or you just want me to check something before you submit it and kind of make sure that the review process is as smooth as possible. Students definitely utilize it for that. And we love that because it actually makes it easier on everyone, right? It's easier on the student because, again, you're not kind of in that time crunch of where you're worried about deadlines and stuff yet. So it's not super stressful. And for us, it's always really good because it's so much easier and faster for the reviewer and for your turnaround, right? So for example, I've had students that their document is like pretty much perfect and they'll meet with me. I'll review it for them using the checklist that we'll see in a minute. And then, give them the very last pointers on what they need to correct and change. And then they submit it and it's over super fast and easy, right? So always feel free to do that. And again, you don't have to, but I always tell students there's maybe someone who doesn't even know about about the formatting manuals or know that they had to do this, right? Submit it, and it's in a time crunch because you have all these deadlines. You know, you don't know how to do page numbers. It's just super stressful for everyone. So I always say the kind of earlier on you can kind of start thinking about these things, the better, because a lot of it you'll have to do anyway, right? Like make a table of contents, let's say. So this way, if you already know where it's supposed to be, in what order, and like the headings and things, it makes it a lot more simple. Okay, and then finally, you know, as I said before, when in doubt, always email, always reach out to us. We're more than happy to help. We have a ton of different people on our team that help out. And again, if it's doesn't fall under our direct umbrella, we'll get you to the right person. So for example, I've had office hours meetings with students, and they might have an IRB question, because sometimes students want to meet before they've actually even started, which is totally fine too. Like I said, it's never too soon to think about formatting, but there's these different things, right, that you're thinking about in that process. So IRB, or maybe paperwork that you have to turn in. That's going to be the grad college RPC team, or retention, progression, completion, right? That's who does all of your forms and paperwork, culminating experience, all those things. So anytime students have questions towards, you know, that final part where you're wrapping everything up for graduation, feel free to reach out. This is, again, the email address for the thesis and dissertation team, and then we kind of just sort out from there who needs to address what. But always feel free to send any questions there. I don't think I mentioned this, but this is also who you email to set up an office hours appointment. So if you do want to make an appointment for office hours, just email that gradtd@unlv.edu. And then they'll set that up and connect you with myself. And 9 times out of 10, you'll be doing your appointment with me. So that's always fun, right? No, very helpful. And then that's my email address on the last one if you want to reach out. Again, any questions about formatting, or maybe you can't find a certain manual for something, or a certain link for something, always feel free to reach out to those. And we'll get you to the right place. All right, so that was all kind of getting the document ready, which is really the biggest part, right? Like I say, the whole purpose of the formatting review process is to make sure that it meets all of these different guidelines that the publisher wants, right? That ProQuest requires. And it's also an issue of kind of professionalism, right? You all have worked so hard on these documents, so we want your final document to look as nice and as professional as possible, because it deserves that, right? So once you've put in all that hard work, making sure everything looks right, then you're going to get ready to submit it for your format review. So again, this is that main website that we were on before, the Grad College Thesis and Dissertation Guidelines website. And then once you're there, you're going to go down to number 10, and you'll see Format Review. And then in there, where that arrow is, you'll see a hyperlinked link where it says Submission Website. You'll click on that link, and it will take you to the Grad College portal, right, to submit your final document. So you'll enter things in there. There's some information to fill out. You'll put your name, your NSHE ID, the chair, things like that, the title of your document. And then that's also where you'll upload the PDF of your final document. And there's instructions on how to do that in the manuals if you're not sure, but we always have to review the documents in a PDF and in not a Word version. And one of the reasons for that, there's several, but the main one is this way, when the reviewer is going through, they don't accidentally change something or delete something or move something, right? Again, technology can be interesting sometimes, so we try and prevent whatever we can and just make sure that it stays your original piece of work, right? But so this is where you'll go to submit that on the website under number 10. You'll just upload your final document, and then you'll receive an email from the grad college letting you know, hey, we've got your document. And then this is what the review process will look like. So once we receive your email, once we receive your email, we go ahead and send that document to one of our reviewers. We have a team, and so we'll send that to them. And from that day, typically it's about a 4 business day turnaround is what you can kind of expect. There's certain times of year that are much faster. You'll hear back in a day or two, but then there's other times of year, like when it's like at the deadline for everyone to submit at the very end, we get kind of this flood, right? Which is fine. Everyone, that just happens. But it does take a little bit longer. And so again, that usually happens around the end of the semester. If you just defend like close to the deadline, that could be one reason. But yeah, always try and get that in as soon as possible after your defense. That way you're not trying to rush or have to worry about those things. But usually, typically, and I only mention that because, again, during those busy times, it might take longer, let's say. So instead of 4 days, it might take like 7. And then you have to turn around and make those revisions. And then there's still more deadlines coming, right? So just, it gets hectic fast. But again, typically about 4 days. And after that, your reviewer will email you with the checklist. And on the right-hand side, this is a screenshot of the checklist that we use. And this is what will be sent to you. So it'll have your reviewer's name, the date, your name, whether or not you need revisions, and where that arrow is. It's probably pretty small on here, but it says, please see the comments section at the bottom of the following sections for instructions on what specific changes must be made. So for example, where that arrow would be, you might have a list of different sections. You would see 1, 3, 7, and 9, let's say. There's 10 sections. So then you would go through, section 1 is the cover page. And don't worry, students always get like kind of nervous, which I don't blame them, when they see this checklist because there's all these boxes and lines, right? But that's why we put the note there, just see the bottom of that section, because what we do, as that very last bullet point says, is the reviewer will put comments in there of precisely what you need to change, and sometimes even how to change it, right? So for example, on the cover page, the very first one, well, we won't use that one because it's on there. Text is centered on the page, for example. So if students have it maybe, centered aligned left or right, or I don't know, just not centered, your reviewer would check no on that checklist, but then down in the comments section, they would put a note on there saying, please be sure all text is centered on your cover page, right? So you're never going to have to go through and use that checklist. That's just for the reviewer. Anything that you'll have to change will be spelled out for you line by line in the bottom of that section. So again, we try and make it super clear for the students what it is that needs to be done. Okay, so after that, you will apply any corrections that are on the checklist. You'll send that back to your reviewer, and then you might do this one time, right? It might be multiple rounds of revisions. Just depends. Typically, I would say it depends on how prepared the document is before it's submitted. Makes a huge difference. So if you look at the manuals, if you try, if you really kind of put in an effort, most students is like 1 round, maybe 2. And don't feel bad. It's not bad if you have revisions. I'm the thesis and dissertation formatting manager, and for my dissertation, I had 1 round of revisions. I was like, oh, I tried so hard to not have any. And sometimes it's just, we look at our document so much that there's things you don't catch, you don't see. And again, that's our job to kind of find those things and catch those things and help you out there. But however many rounds of revisions it takes, at the end of that, you'll get an email that looks like the image below saying, congratulations, you received formatting approval, everything looks great. So then what comes next? Hey, so once you receive that email saying that you have formatting approval, on there, your personal RPC coordinator will be on that email. So they will see that your document has been approved, that they can go into our files and get your approved document, and then they'll go in and insert your approval page. And what they'll do is email you with your final document, including your approval page. And they'll have you take a look at that, make sure everyone's names are correct, department, everything looks good. And then once you approve of that, they'll send you your final PDF copy along with instructions on how to upload to ProQuest. And that's going to be the same thing. You're going to be going to that main thesis and dissertation website, and they'll have more information about ProQuest down there in number 11. And digital scholarship, that's where it's housed. Okay, and then after that, that's it. Once you upload to ProQuest, you're done. So after you receive that formatting approval, all of that with your RPC coordinator is just done back and forth via email. But it's all pretty fast. Once you receive that approved email, usually it's maybe a day or two. Again, maybe like 4 business days at the most, depending on how many other students they're working with again. But from there, it's very back and forth, right? And everything is told to you by your RPC coordinator or someone on our team, right? What do you need to submit? Here is your copy. It's a lot less stress than before, right? With all these deadlines and confusion and all this. So again, we really do try and make it as simple and streamlined as possible. We know it's a stressful time, an exciting time. So yeah, that's all I really had. And then if anyone had any specific questions that they wanted to ask or anything like that, go ahead and feel free.
We'll give it a few minutes and see if anybody asks one, but I could ask you one just to kind of start us off. When you were formatting your dissertation, because I know that you graduated from UNLV, so you went through this process specifically with this university's policies, and so what did you personally find to be most difficult when it came to formatting your dissertation?
Oh, that's a good one. So there's a couple of different things I would say. So some things are not hard, but they're tedious. So for example, my dissertation had a lot of figures. And so doing all that spacing was definitely a challenge. And a lot of times students, they might think to themselves, like, why are they making us do this? Or, I had thought that before, even just reviewing them. But it really does look so much better, so much more professional, because when they have it in what they call like publishing format, it's like if you're looking at the 2-page display, right? And so if you scroll through it, even at that 2-page level, it just looks so much cleaner, so much more organized. So that I would say was a challenge just because it was tedious, right? You move one thing or you do one thing and then it's like, oh shoot, did that mess up my table? Now I got to move that to the top of the next page and, make sure everything's okay. So again, not hard, but just a little tedious. One thing to note is if you have under 5 tables or figures, you don't have to include a list of tables or figures in your document. If you have 5 or more, which I definitely did, I think I had like 37 images or something, it was a lot. Then you would include a list of tables or figures or equations, let's say, and that would look just like your table of contents. It'll have the table name and number, name, and title, and then you'll have your, your ellipses going across, and then your page number, right? So that's one thing that's just tedious. What I would say is the most difficult, or was for me personally, and I get this a lot even with other students, like helping students. One thing that's always kind of technically not fun is the page numbers. And again, it's kind of, I think, due to two different things. One, I just think most students don't have to really use that, like for papers and for class, or, you know, unless you have some kind of reason why you've had to do that. So if you know how to do that, you're going to be like awesome, and it would be wonderful. And it's really not that hard. Now I know how to do it, like the steps, right? But the second part of what makes it a little tricky is that the page numbers is one of those things in Word that you can be doing it the right way, and for whatever reason it doesn't want to save, or then when you open it, it might have changed, right? And you got to do it again. So I would say like page numbers is probably the most like technically frustrating. But again, we have ways of helping everyone with that, and we will definitely get it taken care of for you. That's why I always tell students, don't worry, we'll take care of it. But yeah, that's what I would say.
Thank you for that. Another question I had for you is, when you export a document out of Word, you usually get two options if you're going to PDF, which is prepare it best for printed version or for electronic distribution. And do you think there's one that's better?
Yes, and very good question. So you want to do the one that's better for electronic distribution. It's not a huge deal usually, but there are little things that will be different, let's say. So for example, for table of contents, you can either manually create your table of contents, right? Meaning just like type in, you know, each line and do it like that, which that's how I did it, only because the other way to me was, it's just super complicated. But for people who are good, like at computer, you know, maybe coding, things like that, it might be a lot easier to do it the other way. But if you create an automatic table, and then that's where it will link to each section in your document, right? If you do that, if you save the PDF to the print version, a lot of times those won't work, or like hyperlinks won't work, things like that. So again, not a huge issue most of the time, but if we can tell that it's supposed to be and it's not, like we would tell the student, you know. But yes, when in doubt, always do that electronic version for us. That's a good question.
Thank you. And hearing your answer made me think of hyperlinks. I know one of the most common mistakes that you put on that document was that hyperlinks need to be all black font. Does
Yes.
that mean color them black but leave the hyperlink, or remove the hyperlink?
Yes, good question. So that literally just means to make it black, like the text black. So you can leave the hyperlink, leave all of that, and same with email addresses too. So usually it happens on people's CVs where they'll have email addresses listed, and in their reference section where you'll have websites and stuff. And yeah, you can definitely leave those, but that again is just a rule from the publishing side. Nothing can be in color except images, a table, your appendix, right? All these different little things. But that's one of them, that like none of the text can be in color. It has to be black. So yeah, you would just highlight it and then in Word and then like change it to black right there.
Perfect. Thank you. Well, I appreciate you answering all my questions. I don't see any other questions in the chat. Oh, let's see. I think one just came through. This is, I don't know if you see it on your end, or would you like me to read it to you?
Oh, go ahead. No, I
Okay.
don't see it.
Okay. Someone said, this is all great information for when a student makes it to the dissertation phase. Is there a specific outline such as this for the proposal phase? Everything I have found just states chapters 1 through 3, but is there an example, formatting details, etc. for chapters 1 through 3, or am I overthinking? I guess I would just like more instructions for students at the prospectus or proposal phase.
Yes, good. And that's definitely something I get a lot of questions about, which is a good thing, right? Like I said, you can't think about this stuff too soon, because it just makes your life easier in the long run, I think. But so the short kind of answer for that, or the good answer too, I guess, is that for proposals, we don't really suggest anything for that, only because proposals tend to be very specific for the department and field, let's say. And that's another reason why we don't provide like actual outlines for documents. Like sometimes students will ask like, oh, is there like a template, let's say, that I can use to organize my paper? And we don't provide that only because, especially at the beginning, until you've defended, like we want to make sure everything is what your committee wants and like per the discipline, right? Because all we're really looking at is like that formatting. But you can still use our tools for that prospectus and proposal process, right? So what I tell students to do is if you take our required sections and kind of make an outline yourself of, because that will outline for you what sections are required and then which ones are optional, right? And then what order they should be in. So for your proposal, really you're only going to have what ends up, like you said, being in those first couple chapters, because everyone's last couple chapters are going to be on your findings and then your conclusion, right? So what, excuse me, what I tell students is to take the manuals that we have in that order and kind of build yourself a little outline, and then get with your chair. That's key. We always at the grad college tell students that we defer first to your chair and the discipline, right? What is it that they want you to have in there? Because the substance is the most important part, right? And the formatting is important, but again, that's kind of secondary. So we want to make sure that your committee is happy with everything that's included, things like that. So for example, in our abstract formatting manual, we talk about very generally what students should include in there. And then really you should be working again with your chair to kind of really, what should I be mentioning, you know, what sections should be within that. But that's what I think would be the best way to kind of prepare for that, is use that document order one. And then if you have anything within those, you can always go to those formatting manuals and kind of double check and even set up an office hours appointment. But for most things, especially in the very early stages, we say it's always best to make sure you're on the same page with your chair, your committee, and make sure just kind of they approve of how to move forward first.
Yeah, I think that's great. Both recommendations you're giving, you know, first to get started as early as possible so that you can focus on the content and the formatting as you go, instead of being crushed by the weight of trying to format everything at the very end. And then also speaking openly with your advisor about what they expect, or your chair specifically.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes me think of a recommendation that a former PhD student mentioned in an earlier workshop this week about her recommendation was, assuming you're not the first in a brand new program, look at what other students have submitted and gotten accepted that came before you in your program. That way you can see what's come through.
Yes, and that actually reminds me of so again at those early stages, right, where that question was asking, you know, I think kind of and I always have students asking, you know, kind of what should be included in those, right? Or what should be that setup like in those early stages, like as you're preparing, just so you can even, I think it's helpful to mentally like wrap your head around all of these different things and help you organize. But we always tell students, when you're talking with your chair, ask them if there's a repository in your department, or look up some on the UNLV, like through the library, past examples of specifically your discipline, right? Because again, we're concerned about like the visual of it, kind of like the optics of the paper, like does it look good? But all of that content, right, that's all going to be based on your discipline specifically and what your committee wants and your chair wants because of the academic rigor, right? So you always want to go to your chair. I tell students, if you're wondering what should be included in those sections, and I did this myself, and some departments, I think, might be better at it than others. Some have like actual repositories, like I say, that students can look at, like printed out in their own little library. But your chair is always gonna always have examples of things you can look at that past students have done. And then, I suggest taking a look at 2 or 3. Because no one student is going to, that way you're able to see the general similarities and then be able to apply that to your own work. So that's definitely a good way to start outlining for your prospectus and stuff.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
I see that somebody asked in the chat if you wouldn't mind sharing the link for the organization of thesis dissertation used at this presentation. I'm guessing that's on the thesis and dissertation website, right? That link for organization of thesis and dissertation.
Yes, yeah, that's on the website. It's under, we'll look it up actually while we're all on here. But yeah, that's on that main thesis and dissertation website. But it's going to be under, I think like number 2 or 3. Let me change how this is sharing. I just stopped sharing it. Let me stop sharing and then I'll reshare, sorry. All right. We'll just do screen that way. All right, so let me pull that up. Can you see that? Is the TD website? Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
All right, so, okay, and which one were we looking for? That organization or like?
That's right. Yeah, the organization of, maybe document order. Is that right, Cecilia?
Is that it?
Oh, number 5. Let's see, which one was that?
So this organization of thesis and dissertation, yeah, that's what I think you're talking about, Cecilia. This is on that main web page too. Yeah, okay. Well, it's good we came here because now you made me think of something else or the other one. So thank you. You're very welcome. So yeah, this is that main TD website. And this is in the PowerPoint a couple times, but I think it's like UNLV, let's see, it's unlv.edu/grad college/thesis. And everything is going to be on here, but this is where that number 5 is, organization of thesis and dissertation. These are the manuals for each section. So like, when you're doing your copyright page, what should be on there? That's not required. Cover page, right? What should be on there? But then up here, this is what I thought we were looking for, but going back to that other question about kind of preparing for your prospectus, or, I mentioned kind of making your own little outline. You would find that here under number 3, general guidelines for theses and dissertation. And then here on the second one down, this is also where the most common formatting mistakes are, issues, the third one. But this second one, document order, this is where you'll see exactly what you should include. So it'll show on here, cover page or title page required, copyright optional. So you can go through and just outline all of those required sections. And then, like I say, if it would be your prospectus, you could even actually include a lot of this down here, right? If you know something will go in your appendix, or, you're gonna have to have your references, so make sure it's in the right order. And then one thing that we didn't really talk about too much today, but this last one here, curriculum vitae or CV required, that's actually a good one to kind of look at really fast since we're all on here. Do we have time? Or like, we have like 10 minutes?
Yeah,
Okay.
we still have about 8 minutes.
Okay, I just want to make sure. We could do this all day, or I could anyway. But that's a good one to look at, right? Curriculum vitae. So if you already have a CV, you're more than welcome to just kind of like copy and paste kind of thing. You just have to have the heading, curriculum vitae. But we have some examples, right, on here. And as you'll see, the example that's on here, all it includes is And this actually needs to be updated, so don't look too hard. This is a bad example, but I mean, it's good for formatting, but we do need to update it. So it needs to have that heading, curriculum vitae. It has to have your name. And then on here, a school address is fine, like UNLV address. And if this was UNLV phone, that's good. But you shouldn't have your personal phone number or address. If you have it on there, we just tell you to remove it, only for privacy issues, because it's going to be public, right? And be able to be pulled up online. And for that same reason, though, because we want other scholars to be able to get a hold of you, we require you to put an email address that's a non-UNLV address, because your student email will go away so many semesters after you graduate. So for that reason, we have people use like Gmail, Yahoo, something that you can kind of monitor in case people want to contact you about your work. But there have been instances, like I say, nothing is, impossible. Like there's instances where, let's say someone is a UNLV faculty member, and they're using their faculty email, like that's allowed. Things like that, or if for like privacy reasons, people don't want to include a Gmail, will allow them to use a different UNLV email, right? But all of these little things. So you'll see that that's pretty much all that we require you to have, and that anything else on there is up to you. So like I said, if you want to include everything, you can just put the heading and then copy and paste it over, because that's all we really care about is that highlighted part. But that's literally it. We have students just turn that in all the time, because a lot of departments don't necessarily use CVs that much. And so for some people, this is the first time they're making one, or they might use, like traditional resumes or something. Let's see. What did it? I think there was a question about ORCID, like your ORCID ID, right?
Yeah, Cecilia, are you asking if you should put your ORCID ID on your CV, or are you asking something different?
I think that's what it is.
Yes, on
Yeah,
the
okay.
CV, if it's allowed to use or not, or recommended or not.
Yeah, so you definitely are allowed to put it. I've actually seen that. That's, again, that one is kind of like a discipline specific one. But yeah, there are certain disciplines where you want to put that on there because you want to be able to show people that, you have that like certification, or that you've gotten, what you need to have that ORCID ID, things like that. And that you still have it. So if you want to put it, you definitely can, but we don't require you to put it now. Does that help? Okay, good.
I have one more just in case anybody else wants to type one in while I ask this. But it's about publication. So it gets, or not publication, but it gets accepted and it's deposited in a ProQuest, which is part of digital scholarship. And I'm wondering if you could provide any information about what our intellectual property rights are of that after. Like, can we post it on like ResearchGate or other places, or is that something where we have to direct people to ProQuest?
Yeah, that's a good question. So for the technical answer to that, I would leave it to an RPC team member, just because that's kind of their wheelhouse. But on here, you'll see, where is we have something for embargo, the UNLV embargo website, and that's where you would need to go. Or that would have like some of those details that goes over kind of, kind of which different type of protection you would need for your work. So for example, and we have the link for this in the copyright page manual, because kind of goes along with that same thing. Usually if a student is interested in having their copyright page, then they'll have all those questions about like protection issues, right? So that's where we have the link for this embargo website, option to embargo. And these are some of the reasons, like you mentioned, that people want to look into this. If there's publishing conflicts, or even after the fact, like you said, how is that going to change things or affect things with your document? If there's funding associated with it, a monograph publication timeline, potential to publish in the next few years. So all of these things, if you, oh, the other one is if like you're in engineering, I think a lot of times, or in certain sciences, if there's anything in there that's going to be patented, things like that, there's definitely certain levels of protection that you want to take. And that's going to be, if you go on this website, Digital Scholarship at UNLV, that's where you would send questions. Oh, I'm sorry, not Digital Scholarship here. Our grad RPC, grad.rpc at UNLV, and that's on the embargo, option to embargo website. Have questions or call, because I just don't want to give the wrong answer. But I will say this is like the extent of my knowledge on the subject. So if it's just, if I don't want to say just, if it's your dissertation or thesis or whatever, your doctoral project, whatever it is, typically like 9 out of 10 students, just the process of having it published and uploaded to ProQuest and Digital Scholarship is enough protection of that intellectual property. Again, if it's something where, and always double check, like with that RPC, grad.rpc at UNLV, I can't talk now, but always double check. But unless it's something like you already have part of it published, or again, you want to publish it after, or something that you want to patent, or a business, and these are all legal issues mostly. So if it's anything like that, you definitely want to look into what does embargo look like. And there's actually a couple of presentations on the grad YouTube channel. I know they've talked at a couple of different events, like on some of these issues, and probably got into more, obviously, probably more detail than I know. But always reach out to that grad RPC, and then maybe they could send like whatever they think. Once you tell them your situation, they can kind of maybe help guide you into like what would be best, or give you your options, and then you can pick.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that explanation, and for answering all the questions that came through in the chat as well. I see that we're nearing the end, almost at 3, so I want to thank you again, Dr. Stevens, for illuminating this process for us. It can be difficult since we're so focused on content, but formatting is just as important to finishing out the process. And
yes,
so,
for sure. And thank you so much for having me. This is wonderful. And like I said, always reach out to those email addresses or any way you can. And we're always more than happy to help. So thank you
so
for
much.
having me.
Yeah, appreciate it. And thank you to our attendees for coming and asking questions. Have a great day, everybody.